Everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Vanishing Podcast. We're talking about our new short film, indie film, sci-fi, fantasy film, where we're going to talk about the process and all of the people involved. Today we have Nathan Zachary, who plays our antagonist, protagonist, a little mix of everything, Charlie in the series. Welcome to the first episode, Nathan.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
This is our third film together. Our second film was The Vanishing Part 1. Our third one was The Vanishing Part 2.
Yeah. The most compliments I've ever gotten as an actor is the amount of people that watch our first film together and then meet me on set for The Vanishing, and they're like, "You're the same guy?" I'm like,
a lot of people are like, "You're that guy in the forest?"
You're the guy in the other one? No way. And I'll be like, "Yeah, that is."
Yeah, it's funny because I've seen that out of my corner of my eye. People are like, "Hey, were you that other one?"
It's almost always I'll be talking to somebody, you will walk up and go, "Yeah, this is our third film together." They'll go, "What other film were you in?" If it's not the first one, I'll be like, "Oh, Grandfather Grand." They'll go, "Wait, what? You're the guy?" And it's always that. They never realize it's me. Like, even like our VFX guy, same thing. It's just like, yeah. We were like babies. That was the first narrative film. We were like babies in that one, just trying to figure it out. Yes.
Well, let's talk about like the role and the character of Charlie, and then we'll get into the process and your journey and kind of the bigger picture of the film.
Yeah.
For me, when you first read the script, either part 1 or part 2, what was your immediate instinct about who this character was? Like, what came to mind when you had read Charlie for the first time or the first couple times?
I think, as someone who like is a student of, I think great actors, I spend a lot of time like watching and reading all of these things about them, and a lot of them will talk about like having a moment where they read a script and just like inherently understand something, and I never really had that moment before. And then when you sent me the first draft of Vanishing Part 1, and just like cold, right? It was just kind of like, "Hey, can you read this for me?" I read it on a lunch break at my job at the time and immediately had a sense of who this person was and like their past, that I think the way that Charlie especially presents in the first one is kind of opposing to who he actually is. This is more of a role that's been thrust on him than the soul of this person, and I could kind of begin to put together this whole life. And I just remember thinking, how do I convince Adam to let me play Charlie? Because we had just done a film before, and I was like, I was worried that you wouldn't want to use me as a lead again so soon. And so what I was like, I remember reading it, I think I might have texted my wife, like, "I just read the script and I like need to play this guy, but I don't want to ask him." And then I think the next text you sent me was you asking me to play Charlie, which was, a huge, I can't thank you enough for that. But I think it is just one of those things. Sometimes something comes along that just plugs into a lot of things in your life. And as a kid who grew up playing imaginary games with my friends and living in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, I think there was just something about Charlie as a character that I really inherently understood and felt a huge amount of responsibility for almost immediately upon reading. And I think that's a credit to your writing and world building for sure, that it was so clear to me who this person was.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was like, what a bold move if a writer-director sends you a script and not offer you a role. Just be like, "Hey man, what do you think about this?" It probably happens all the time, but no, I definitely had that trust from the first film to go into another one and I knew this one was a big swing, going into like doing something that was more action based and sci-fi or fantasy, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I had set out even writing it of like, yeah, he'll just play it.
It's so, yeah, because you and I think we connect on our interests in films. We tend to like the same films and the same things, and we like looking at the same music in a lot of cases. And I think at the time I remember thinking maybe he just wants my opinion on this because we have very similar interests, and didn't want to presume. But again, I feel very lucky and very fortunate that you were like, "Yeah, can you do this?" And I was like, yeah, of course. Please, it would be my pleasure.
How did you approach... I feel like Charlie's definitely a character who the audience isn't supposed to trust, especially in part 2. Mm-hmm. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but, in the first film, Charlie is really a character that's essentially hunting our protagonist.
Yeah.
What was it like to play somebody who the audience wasn't meant to trust? Like, is that something that you were thinking about while playing this character, or how did that come up?
I think a lot when it comes to acting is like you want to avoid playing the result. I think like who we are all as people, it started much, much further back in the way we present now sometimes isn't like, a lot of people come off differently than they intend to. And I think with Charlie, it was understanding early life to get where he is now when it comes to like being violent or threatening or untrustworthy or any of those things. I think Charlie is someone who has compromised so much of himself for so long that it's almost like he's like kind of dead inside sometimes. He's like, or he's going through the motions, or it's just a routine thing. And I think trying to find that so that you can kind of come off very not there is where a lot of the a lot of the danger can come from. That kind of like almost that lays dead behind the eyes, but obviously as an actor you want to have inner life, but that kind of just like unyielding, uncompromising, unfeeling, I think was kind of what I think I maybe went a little bit too much for in the first one, but that was kind of the goal of just like being not there until, if for anyone that's watched the first one, I think it's ideally clear when they start seeing each other more as the film goes on. He becomes a little bit more animated because he's around this person he has a history with. And yeah, I think that was my approach to it, was just don't try to play the end result. Build in all this life that you can draw from the reason for why you're doing these things.
It makes sense. Was there a specific moment in rehearsals? Because I know we had a lot of phone calls ahead of time. That's something that I like to do, is not necessarily rehearsals, but a lot of just phone calls to talk about it.
Yeah.
Was there a moment in rehearsal or even on set, I'd be interested if it happened on set, where you felt that you had truly found him?
I think a lot of it has to do... I really want to give Jordan a lot of credit for being an actor that's willing to go there. I think I had done a lot of... Being an actor sometimes is a lot of writing and a lot of like alone work, and then especially film acting, like you kind of only get to live it when we're filming. It's not like a play where you can do it over and over again. And I think I've been writing for a long time and writing things that were really affecting me. When there was a phone call that the three of us had where I remember she and I started talking, because you and I have been talking a lot and we had a really clear idea of where we wanted to go. But as soon as she got involved and we began to see what that dynamic was going to become and how it was going to take shape, I think it's like I needed her presence to be able to really kind of breathe, because so much of those two characters have to do with each other. And when she got involved, when we finally cast Abigail and she and I began talking, I think as two creatives you begin to kind of build off each other's energy, and that's when I really felt like I got a much more full idea of who Charlie is, because he has two very big presences in his life. I don't think this is a spoiler, but like it's refers to in the first one his father and his wife. These are the two biggest pillars in his life, and I think at the time when we shot the first one we didn't have that character to play off of, but I can imagine oppression, but I think finding the love with someone, I think really was the key into Charlie.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we did a story on just Charlie, it just wouldn't make sense, I think, without her. Like, you really understand the motivations with her. What was different for you between part 2 and part 1? Obviously, part 1 was a lot shorter time-wise. In part 2, we can build a lot more. But what really excited you, I think, about part 2, especially when it came to Charlie?
I think I really, really over-prepped for part 1, like to the point where I remember when we finished, because it was such a short shoot, I remember kind of putting my materials away and being like, I felt like I used none of this, and it's all like helpful, but I think it was just so much. And I'd kind of forgotten how much work I'd done for part 1, and then going into part 2, when we knew we were going to come back, and I like opened those files again, I was like, oh my god, I had done all this stuff, whether it be like super in-depth profiles on like what he was wearing and why, and all of these memories, and all of that's, the technique I studied is really based on trying to build this inner life and past life for the character, and reading that all again and knowing that I got so much more time with him, and to show those complexities in part 2 that you only maybe get hints at in part 1, that there is more going on with him, because he really is just an antagonist in part 1, that I think in part 2 we get to see so much more of him, and getting to continue that story for me in prep, and writing some more stuff about what happened between part 1 and part 2, but still being able to bring in all these things that still connected with me. I felt it's nice to return to a character. You don't get to do that very much as an actor, but especially a character that you feel so responsible for and such a deep kind of love and kinship for. It was really nice to be able to feel like all that stuff I did got to have some more life,
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, something too that's not talked about enough, that's really a reason, especially too, to have these conversations is process. And I think you kind of touched on it. But for you specifically, I know you come from a theater background, right? But how do you prepare for a role that requires you to hold a lot of subtext, right? Like Charlie is a bit of a brute, but it has a lot of color to him internally, I feel like. Yeah, how did you prepare for this? Especially with there's so much that happens under the surface with a character like this. What is your prep? You know, I've seen tidbits of it in our conversations, but I don't think I've ever really asked you like what you do for prep.
Yeah, I think I really try to spend a lot of time, Adler technique, which is the acting technique I got to study here at the Professional Conservatory in LA, is really based on imagination work and based on, like, you essentially are making memories for the character, because the way I look at acting is, like, I want it to connect to me as a person, but, like, emotions move differently based on what it is. Being happy because you got a new job is going to be different than being happy because the woman you love says yes when you ask her to marry you. Those two things aren't equivalent. Same thing with sadness and anger. Those things are all very specific, and I think trying to build in significant memories to pull on that connect to me as Nathan, but allow Charlie to kind of live in parallel with me, are a huge tool for me. And then honestly, I think I'm a really big over prepper, and especially when it comes to like lines. Like I am very fortunate that I memorize lines very quickly, but it can kind of be a curse because you can get locked into a cadence, you can get locked into an opinion on your character. And one of the beautiful things about acting, and especially film acting, it's such a collaborative process. You're collaborating with the DP, with the director, you're collaborating even with like lighting and sound and the other actors especially, and you want to make sure you're alive enough on the day that if you had something planned and the other actor throws something at you, you're ready for it. There's a lot of moments on this shoot where another, whether it be Kyoki or Jordan or Ian or even like Ben, when for some of our scenes, like there were things I did not plan on being there, and if I had been so locked in that I wasn't willing to live and let go, I think that's a big thing. So for part of what I've really been focusing on recently is the trust in yourself to let go of everything that you've done. It's like I do all this work and build all these memories and everything, and then I can grip to them so tightly I never live it. And I think on this one, I really, really tried to just not overthink it and just like fully let go of what I had done and fully let go of everything. And I had some really beautiful moments I felt on this where, this was part 2 was a rough shoot for me because I didn't realize until the end how much I was like in it. I felt really lonely and really sad. I felt weirdly guilty, and I didn't really understand why. And it wasn't until our last day that I was like, oh, it's because you're in it, man. You like locked so fully in that, and not like from a method standpoint. It's not like I'm walking around set being a grunty brute or anything. I don't think anyone really would have noticed. Anytime the camera's not rolling, I'm making a joke about something in the corner. But it's like, I think it was so in me that if you can do all that prep and then just trust. It was a really beautiful experience for me, truly, and I can't thank you enough for letting us come back, because I feel like I really learned something and found a new confidence in myself as a performer that hopefully comes through on screen, because like the rest of you, if you're watching this now, I haven't seen the film, so hopefully it worked. But
yeah. I feel like something too that you're kind of like talking about is just presence, and that's what I really look for as a director from actors, is like, is this person present? Or are they just anticipating, right? Like there's moments to anticipate, but presence is so powerful. Is that something as an actor, when it comes to presence, is that something you practice? Like how do you prep for being...
I think this is going to sound, I think, so dumb, but I think if you are present, you will have presence. I think that there's something really powerful. If you're in a conversation with somebody, and they're like facing this way while you're talking, it's just not going to be nearly as powerful as if they're really with you. And I think I had an acting teacher in school, and I'm sure anyone who's an actor that might be watching this has heard this from an acting teacher as well, but they would just be like, everything that you're worried about will be there when you get off stage, when you get off camera. Your money problems, the girlfriend or boyfriend that's not getting back to you, anything in your life, like whatever it is, it's going to be there. And, if you're doing a 5-minute scene, it's going to be there in 5 minutes. like just be there. And I think if you look at great actors, you see that in everything they do. They are so there, like in that moment. And that's what makes them so attractive to us to watch. And it really is, I think, a huge, it's something I've gotten really out of practice with and, you know, trying to come back to since leaving school is it's so easy to have that fractured attention. But taking the moment to just really be there can be so powerful. You know, especially with a character like Charlie that is quiet so much of the time. You know, in the first one I had like almost no lines. In this one, I still don't really have that many lines. And so much of it is him just being there, really trying to live in every take and not worrying about the one you just screwed up before or if you dropped a line or whatever, just being like, this is the moment now. I think that makes a world of a difference.
Yeah, it's just like reminding yourself to stay in it. That makes sense. I'm definitely like when I'm watching the monitor or talking to the actors, I'm in it. And then if there's a down moment, I'm like producing of like, all right, we got to do this shot, we got to do this. My presence is extremely present or way over here.
I think that's the weird thing about being on a film set though, especially like for actors that do go train, is like you spend all this time at whatever technique that you studied or whatever school you studied. Like more often than not, it's going to be stage, even if there's a camera there, even if they're recording everything and they're trying to do acting for film, you know, which that's also a debate. Is there a difference? But like, even if they have that, you're still on stage. You still go take your moment before and you can still do your warm-ups and everything. But like in my school, they talked about this a lot, but it's like, that's not what film sets are like. Film sets are full of people who are, this is a career. This is like their, you know, not 9 to 5, but, you know, this is their 5 to 10, you know, this is their life. And when they're done with this, they're moving to the next job. Our whole crew, we're talking about the next thing that they're all filming a feature right now. It's like they move on to the next thing. And you as an actor, ideally have something coming up next, but you're dealing in much more like ephemeral, ethereal things that aren't, you know, Dean can go move a light and it can, you know, and that's a physical thing he can move, and that's how his creativity shows. Or Joey or Ed can, you know, come swinging a lens and that can be how you change. But the actor, you're trying to walk this line of like being a present collaborator with the rest of the crew in the language that makes sense, and also trying to do this thing that is, and you're also trying to be like, you're also trying to be 6, you know, you're also trying to play this pretend as an adult and not, especially in this film where like, you know, sometimes you're like, the VFX aren't there when we're filming, so it's like you can feel kind of silly, and then you're trying to have a conversation with someone about something very real. I think for actors, it's trying to find that balance of like, how do you still remain a contributing member of the set and also be able to take time for yourself to be a present artist when you need to be. And finding that balance is, I think, even where a lot of really good trained actors can live or die. It's something I worry about a lot too, is just, I could be so prepped and I could be so dialed in 3 minutes before we go yell action, and then something can happen and it can completely throw me off, and then it's just like, you have to find your way back into it. And sometimes it makes you seem very standoffish, but ideally you build good enough credit with the rest of the crew that they understand, like, oh no, he's just, or she's just locked in, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird balance.
What was, I'm curious too, like, what was the biggest surprise transitioning from theater to filmmaking? I know filmmaking is a lot more, you know, we're doing just bits, right? It's a lot of like building a house one brick at a time is kind of how I see it. What have you learned? You know, this is our third film together. Like, what have you learned about the filmmaking process that you've taken back as an actor that maybe you could give to somebody else, like who's getting into short films or wants to be in TV or whatever? It's like filmmaking is such a weird process to me. It's like there is a hierarchy, but then it's communal at the same time. What was, you know, if there's any surprises in just being on set and like the day to day and the moment to moment of it, what have you kind of learned, especially through our 3 projects together?
I think from like a super high level in theater, a lot of it is about the actor or actors. You know, theater is the actor's art form. It really is, because you're kind of in control of like almost everything. And so a lot of the whole operation revolves around you. You know, you have people helping you do a change. If you have a quick change, you have people swapping out your mics. Like, everybody is like really focused on the actors. And that can be wonderful, and that can also be like really overwhelming, especially depending on the size of the production. With film, you are a piece of the puzzle, and you're not that in theater I think you should feel like you're more special than everybody else, but a lot of people make you feel that way because so much is revolves around you. In film, there's so many other things, and in some cases so many other things that are actually more important than you, that understanding when it's your time to take a moment versus stepping back and being the subject of what's happening but not the thing that's happening. It's like whether it's an action shot or there's going to be like there's some type of rig or something needs to move or swing, and there's going to be a crane shot, or there's going to be a wire pull or something like that where it's happening to you, but it's not about your grand moment. And then also knowing when like it is your grand moment and asking for space to have that time. And I think if you do it right, everyone's going to understand that you've been a team player, and so you kind of earned that moment. It's hard if it's at the beginning, you're doing like something big right out the gate or something, but most of the time you have a day or two at least on set to let everybody know you're a team player. And then that way, if you take your moment, people understand this is about you trying to deliver your part of it. I think from an acting standpoint, what the whole first part of my career in film, I think was really, and it's still a struggle I have to this day, is really reconciling and understanding that the camera can actually see you think. And if you really, like the moments that I'm obsessed with as an actor that I watch over and over again and that I try to break down and deconstruct are those moments, and understanding that in theater you can kind of get away with things, and you can kind of, it's obviously, the really, really basic binary understanding is like theater's bigger and film is smaller. And I think that it's much more complex than that. But on stage, you cannot get away with the audience seeing you think. You have to like telegraph a little bit to them, whether it's a small facial expression if you're in a small theater, or you have to do something big with your body for them to see it in a big theater. On camera, like legitimately sometimes doing anything is too much. If the camera is right in your face, or you're just a majority of the frame, if you're actually like present and living, it comes through, and sometimes you'll look back and watch it and go, oh, I did way too much in that moment. Or, we've had moments like that collaborating where you've been like less, and I'll go like, you're not going to see anything, and then we'll play it back and I'll go, oh yeah, no, you were right. That's like, I didn't need to show anything. It's just, I'm living it, live it, let it actually happen, and then it'll show itself.
Yeah, I really like this idea of especially when it comes to film, of like the theater of the mind, right? It's like,
that's a good way of putting it.
Letting them, the audience, put the puzzle piece together, or to let them feel it, of like, if a character, even there's been times with you, or just to any, I'd say, hey, when you're standing here, I just need you to look down real quick.
Yeah.
And it could be so confusing of like, why would I look down? But to me, that is the like, what's happening inside, like he's sinking, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's
in this one, this isn't giving anything away about the second one, but there's a shot in this one, like the first time the audience sees Charlie, where like, I remember we were walking in and you were like, hey, like look at this thing. And it was like, that's not,
look at this light.
Look, that didn't feel natural to me at all. But I like, I've seen that take, and I'm like, oh yeah, you were right. Like where I was looking makes the most sense for frame. But you as a performer are like, no, I feel more connected with like looking down or looking this way or like looking that way, or this feels wrong. But that's part of the trust that you need to build with like any director, is just they are going to care about what the shot looks like, and you need to just go like, okay, like if that looks better, like I trust you.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing too that I've tried to have that is important, is the trust back and forth of like having the actors being like, that you can feel you can ask for another take. Yeah. And then also of like that example of like, hey, I need you to look here. And you're like, that doesn't really make sense to me. But then it's because I'm going to cut to something that you're looking at, exactly. Right? So it's like, I know. So it's the two-way street of that trust, I think, that's so important. Were there any scenes in part one or part two that you had to fight the instinct to do less?
Yeah. In this one, I can't say what scene, but toward the end, where I think we've talked about it a couple times since, but it's like, I still kind of am worried that like we didn't get it, and like just because it felt so internal, it felt so like, I don't know if I was doing enough. But again, that comes back to like, I think trust in your process and trust in the director, and also like, you're not going to get it every time. And I think like just doing what you can in the moment, I really tried not to rehearse the things that I'm talking about and like just try and save it for that moment. And I hope that I delivered the way that I wanted to, but I think that, if that noise came through, I really wanted to deliver the way I was thinking about it, but I was just really trying to be honest and present in that moment and just not push anything because, this film is much higher stakes, I think for all the characters. And I think it can be a trap to try and overplay those stakes. You want it to be taken seriously, but also remembering like who Charlie is, like the first time that he, there's a little bit more like fights in this film, right? And like what Charlie's job is, he's no stranger to that. So it's like the idea of there being a threat is not going to be the same, if me, Nathan, if someone pulls a gun on me, I'm going to be much more stressed than if like someone charges up a frequency blast at Charlie. He's very like...
Yeah.
And so I think really trusting what I had done for those moments, and really the whole film. There were times on this whole shoot where I was just like, am I doing enough?
Let me tell you, Nathan, we got it.
I mean, I remember there was, I can't remember what day it was. I think it was the bureau day where some of my scenes with Kiyoki where I would just be like, hey, is it there? And you like, we got it. And I would just be like, okay, like, cool, but I think that,
Yeah, definitely, like, I would tell you. I hope you know that I would tell you.
No, I know.
But then also it's like, I think there is a responsibility to the actors. I don't know, people could argue with me about this. Is like, as a director, I know what I want, and I feel like when we have it, we have it. But an actor, if they want one more, has every right to ask for it. And hopefully you have an environment where you could feel that way. But it's also, like, you're like, dude, just you don't have to beg. It's like, give me one more. Great. No problem. Because you never know if it's one level deeper or if it's just, I just want to try something. It's easy to do the same thing over and over again. But I feel like any advice I would give to an actor is like, if you feel like you want another one, ask for it.
Yeah, and I do think that we had a really good set for that on this one. I think each actor that I can think of that I got to work with, I think asked for one more at least once. And like the entire crew was like, yeah, let's go. I mean, also, we got so much we didn't go very long on most of our takes on this one, which also felt awesome, being like everyone was pretty locked in from day one, that I think we really had the time. We weren't running too far over very often, which is rare for filmmaking, and that was really nice. There's Ryan Gosling right now, when he was doing the press tour for Project Hail Mary, he talked to the Radio 1 interviews with Ari, I can't remember his last name, but he talked about someone telling him, like, you gotta remember this isn't for you. And, like, it doesn't matter if you feel it. It matters if the audience feels it.
Totally.
And I think that's something that really hit me when he said that. I think I saw it right before we went and shot, and it was something I thought a lot about while we were doing it, where it's just like, as actors, sometimes we get so caught up in like, I'm an artist and I'm feeling all these feelings and I need to let them out and I have all this stuff, and it's just like, at the end of the day, if I feel all that stuff and it doesn't do anything, then it doesn't matter. I can talk to everybody that I know about how I was so in it during that moment, and if they watch it and go, yeah, you look kind of normal, and I failed, versus if I do something and I didn't feel it at all, and I turned to my wife and she's crying, and I go, okay, well, I guess it worked. Even though I didn't feel like I connected, what matters is that it affected her and not that I was affected while we were shooting,
Yeah. And I know, ladies and gentlemen, that Nathan's wife did cry when she saw the preview of the
That's
film.
true, she did.
I think but that's a good point, especially when it comes to like truth, right? Like, you want it, especially in a world like this where there's a lot of world building and magic, you do want there to be a level of truth.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's that whole, like, Michael Caine talking about, like, an actor who's holding back tears and trying not to cry is more powerful than just someone crying, right? So, it's a good point. Was there a hard shot or a hard scene for you on either shoot, and how did you get through it? Like, you were like, man, that was tough, but we made it through? Or, hey, if the whole shoot was gravy, man, I'll take it. But I'm curious if there was something of like one that you were really not nervous for, but that was just it. How did you get through it if it didn't feel the way you wanted it to? You know what I mean?
On the first one, the shot where Charlie looks into the case, I struggled with that a lot. I think because I bumped into the line, not because it wasn't well written, but because for some reason I couldn't figure out how I wanted to say it. And I remember you and I discussed it a lot, like on set. Well, the setup was being done, where I was just like, how am I supposed to say this? And then we kind of found, I was really just struggling with like the truth of what that line was. The like, this is how you've been hiding this whole time. I think it was like storing and funneling your energy into this or something. And then when we shot that like tracking shot of me backing up, I had like the most intense abdominal cramp of my life. It actually ended up in the cut. You can see my arm do this, and I'm like this, and I'm holding my stomach. It's because I like my abs cramped up when we were doing that, or lack of abs cramped up while we were doing that. In this one, the scene I was talking about earlier, which if people watch it and watch this back, I think they'll know what I'm talking about. But there's a particular scene that in this one you get to see Charlie struggle so much, and I think I really wanted to. I got emotional the first time I read the script for this one, because I felt what I kept saying to myself during this shoot is like, I need Charlie to live, because I'd spent so much time working on him, and it kind of makes me emotional, honestly, like thinking about that. But it's just like there was something about saying that. I remember talking to my wife on the phone midway through the shoot and saying that, and actually getting like emotional on the phone and just being like, I need him to live for like just these 5 days. I need him to be alive. And I did so much work to look different, like anyone that looks at my Instagram or any of my materials, like my hair is never like this. I don't ever have a beard. Like, I'd never grown a beard out like that in my life. I did that because like I saw so clearly what he was supposed to look like, and I felt if I didn't deliver in those moments, I was going to let myself down, but worse, let this person that I had like breathed all this love and thought into down. And I think that was really intimidating going into the shoot, and going like, if I miss this moment, I'm never going to forgive myself. And then having to, again, like we talked about earlier, I was like, it's valid, and I'm going to let that, I got to let that go. Like, I just got to be there. And so I think this whole shoot was hard, but like day 3 for me was the hardest day, which I can't say why, because you guys are going to have to watch the film. But
yeah. Well, it's definitely like something to be learned here, of just stepping past fear. Because that's what it sounds like to me. I mean, even I'll be the first person to raise my hand. And I was very open about it on set. And this is something that I've personally tried to hide in the past, but that I've learned actually, I think helps, is like day 1 and day 2 especially, I had a full-blown panic attack. I couldn't tell you why.
I remember you.
And I told people, I was like, dude, oh my God, I saw myself in the mirror and I'm like, do I need to go to the hospital? But it was just like, you care so much about this thing and you want to do it justice. And for me, my way of getting through the fear is talking about it. Just telling people, man, I have crazy anxiety today. But we're going to get all this done and it's going to be fantastic. And that kind of like breaks some nerves, especially with some, even if there's like a first time actor, I know that helps, of like, hey, the director's nervous. I'm confident because I know what I want and I know what I'm going to do. Doesn't mean that I'm not nervous. Like, that's just being human, right? So for me, that's helped, of like being open about it with people. But I think as an actor, what you kind of were talking about is like fear, like how to push past it. Like you have to.
It's a weird thing. Like, acting is just a weird thing. Filmmaking is sort of a weird thing, but acting is a weird thing, And it's like, when do you know? What I'm saying in this, what I'm saying in this podcast is like just worse renditions of things that much, much better and greater actors than me have said. And I think that like you hear these things and they sound very romantic, but when you're actually doing it, you're kind of always like, how much prep is enough prep? Like, how do I know when I should step back and trust it? And I think that's the really thing that you get really afraid of, is like, did I not prep enough? Am I just phoning it in because like this is hard and I didn't spend enough time writing or reading or thinking about, in the first one, like that choking moment, like I rehearsed that like several times because I was like, I want it to seem as real as possible. I did some breath work to figure out how am I gonna make it seem like I'm actually suffocating without dying. And like, even though I came close on the first take, but like you do all that stuff and then letting it go, it feels almost lazy. Because you're just like, but I did all this stuff, and to put it to the side or to just trust that it's in you is such a like vulnerable place, and that's the point, is like that vulnerability, I think, almost is your way into it, is being like, oh God, like, am I gonna do this? I have nothing else to do. I'm gonna just do my first reaction, and then you step back and you go, oh, like that was the work. My reaction was all the things that I let go in a perfect world. But yeah.
What's something in this role that taught you about yourself as an actor?
You know, I think all of our work together has been kind of me like shifting and changing as an actor and stepping into kind of a new phase in my career, I think, because, you know, when we did Grandfather Grey together, I hadn't worked in a while. You know, COVID had happened and I was out of school and really struggling to make ends meet, and then I met my wife and I got married, and I didn't really know what it looked like to be an actor anymore in a world where like I wasn't just available to do anything, whatever. And on this one specifically, I was reminded why I love this so much, and simultaneously reminded why time is so precious. And I think it's something you and I have talked about, where like it became very clear to me that like I'm not going to just do anything anymore. You know, like it's not worth it for me to step so far away from my life for no reason. You know, when I was in my like early 20s, I would just like go and be on set for as long as possible. But like, you know, I have things I want to do. You have a child that you want to go be with, you know, like, and I think as you get older and your life builds up as an artist, it can start to feel like, oh God, can I do this still? Because I have other commitments, you know, whether it's just a partner or it's a whole family, or, you know, there's so much that can get in the way. And I think for this one, it was the biggest swing I've took in a while in terms of really trying to deliver something and transforming yourself for a character. And I think it showed me in a lot of ways, like, for lack of a better expression, like you still got it, you know, like you still want to do this and you still can commit to it and you're still an actor, you know. And I think this industry can go through so many ups and downs. I mean, there's all these layoffs that are happening now at Disney and Sony, and, you know, there's all the stuff happening in our industry. And so you have these peaks and these valleys, and this specific film like reaffirmed for me, like, yeah, you do want to keep doing this. Like, there is something to push this, and I think you probably should be doing this. And that's, I think, sometimes hard to be that resolved, you know, and to be that, I guess, confident, like, so sure, like, yeah, no, you want to keep pushing for this. Yeah, it
makes sense. I think it's just those, especially as you get older and there's family involved and things, like you become more specific on what you work on, and then also just like what resonates with you too, right? Like really giving yourself a filter of like, even for me, like scripts of like, do I want to write this script? Do I want to work on this story? Like it is such a big, you know, it was 18 months from the first one to the filming of the next one. It was about like almost 2 years between filming. And so it's like that journey to get to there, like you really have to want it. Not all of us are trust fund kids get in this industry, which most people aren't. So it's just being really specific. And I think then that shows over your lifetime will show as a body of work of like, you chose all these things that then create a body of work that's really beautiful rather than, you know, doing whatever. But sometimes that works for people too.
There's something about like, I was worried that I'd get older and I'd like lose the hunger or something. And I think what I realized on this one, honestly, is like there's work that I couldn't have done before I met my wife. Because like they talk, at least in the, you know, the drama school I got to go to, they talk a lot about like love and love being such a defining characteristic for us as people. We do so many things for love. Sometimes we hate out of love, you know, and like I don't think I could have like played Charlie the way that I feel he should have been played if I didn't so deeply understand the love I have for my wife and for my partner, and that like kinship and what it would feel like to lose someone. You know, I think there's a difference between adolescent love and like everlasting love. And I think I've realized in this one, because I have this stuff in my life, because I have these other things, it gives me tools as an artist that I wouldn't have had before. And that's not to say that it's true for everyone. Like I might just be like limited in that way, and it was hard for me to feel locked in on those things. But after, you know, being with her, and, you know, we've been married for 5 years and are still going very strong, and, you know, I think have that deep connection. It was like I understood Charlie in a way that I don't even know I understood him on the first one. You know, going into this one, being able to have that so inherently in me because I understand, Nathan understands it, Charlie gets to understand it for Abigail. And yeah, I think that sometimes living life outside of it really, really helps inform you as an artist.
Yeah, I just want to shout out the wives of the project. Oh my
God, yes.
And the partners to everybody on this project, just because it is, especially it was a 5-day shoot, it's a lot. There's a lot of prep. There's a lot of nights of writing, nights of editing, nights of prepping. Like it is a lot to ask of another person. So just quick shout out to everyone who supports.
Two partners that just were like, just speaking for the two of us, but like to have them like pushing us out the door almost to go do this is a gift, especially, you know, your wife is managing a small child as well, which is, you know, my wife just has to, you know, be here alone, but your wife managing a whole other human being. So yes.
Yeah. Shout out to them. What do you want people to feel when they watch your performance in this second film?
I think I'd like them to see the love we were talking about. I really hope that comes through. I hope that they feel the guilt that I think he feels, and I hope that they understand him in maybe a way they didn't get to in the first one. You know, like the things Charlie's made a lot of decisions that I don't think he's particularly proud of, and I think in this one we kind of get a chance to examine that, and I hope that people, when they watch it and walk away, they see him as more of like an anti-hero and less of an antagonist. You know, I think it's like he did his best, you know, and yeah, I hope that that's what they see when they walk away.
They will, man. I think they will. This is interesting to hear your answer to this one. Is like, what's the conversation that you hope this film starts? I think we had gone to one film festival together in Sacramento, the IMAX, and like coming out of that, we both were just that conversation of just like that this felt a lot bigger, and not in like an ego way of like, man, this feels like a big story, but just coming out of that, of the conversation of part one was like, well, what happens next? Like there was really a hunger for more of this story.
Yeah.
What do you hope people kind of leave this second film feeling or talking about?
I think there's a big theme in this of like generational trauma in a way, specifically for Charlie. I think there's a lot handed down to him, and I think especially right now at a time when we're seeing a lot of, I think, ugly institutions that we thought maybe were not as prevalent in society as they are kind of stand up and be a lot more a part of our everyday culture. I think it's hard to not draw parallels between what the Bureau is and what some of these other things happening in the world are, and, you know, in our country are. And I hope that this story, or Charlie's story in particular, is able to speak to, you know, it's never too late to stand up for what's right, and it's never too, you know, maybe it's not supposed to be easy, and there's always going to be, everything has a cost, but there are things that are worth standing up for, and there are things that are worth fighting for. And that's something I thought a lot about when we were prepping for this one, and I think what felt so powerful to me, it felt so timely in a world that is so different from ours in a lot of ways, because, you know, like there's magic, but like other than that, you know, there are a lot of parallels to things that we can, it's in a lot of, some ways it feels kind of like one battle after another with magic, you know what I mean? Like there's this kind of thing happening, that this evil organization that has its hands and everything, and this story hinges on two people, and I think sometimes it can come down to something like that. So I hope people walk away and feel that there are things worth fighting for, and it's, like I said, it's never too late. You can always stand up for what's right, and yeah.
I hope that people say, where do we give them more money to make another one?
People say, man, I wish I could see more of this, and also give them all the money to make it. That's what I hope, yeah.
And give them my inheritance. It'd be a really good way for me to spend my inheritance money. I got two questions left for you. If you could give one piece of advice to an actor who's going to play a villain, what would it be? Well, you know, we've kind of talked about Charlie as an antagonist. I know you see him as an anti-hero, but yeah, if someone was going to play a villain and they've seen your characters, what would you tell them?
I think this is something that Kyoki will probably bring up too, because I think he said it when we were on set, but like every villain is a hero, you know, and I think that's the best villains that you see in stories are heroes of their own story. You know, if you can justify their actions that they're taking that are not just evil, you know, that's what makes a villain like Thanos or Killmonger, you know, in the Marvel movies, Loki, really compelling as heroes. Is like they have a reason for what they're doing. It's not, you may not agree with what the reasons are, but you can almost see where they're coming from, especially like Killmonger and especially Thanos. Like I think the two of them, you're like, you're kind of right, like you're almost there, and then you just went a little bit too far to the left or the right. That's not a political statement, just like, you know, it's skewed. But yeah, I think that like that, if you play your villain as a hero, you're going to make a much more compelling villain. Yeah,
but I also think about, too, like, especially in writing, when there's villains of, like, if this person was the main character, would the story still hold up?
That's
right? Like, they're definitely still the villain and the antagonist, and they're there to push the protagonist, right? Like
Yeah.
they're the obstacle. But if I flipped this and they were the main character, would the story still work? It's something I look for, at least. A fun tidbit.
Yes. Sorry, I was just my wife
you're
is
good.
texting me. Okay, I'm back. Yes,
You're like,
I agree
sorry,
with
I'm
you.
doing press.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that's a super cool way to look at it too. I think as an actor, you don't get that pliability with the story, but as a writer, I totally see what you're saying. Like, can this story stand on its own if it was just about this person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, is there enough depth to this person that you could make their own story, right?
Yeah.
If they're just there to serve a purpose, then doesn't make sense. Like, then they're not well developed. But
yeah, I think
okay,
last point
Go ahead.
during the shoot, Kiyoki and I were talking, and he started telling me about some of his work that he was doing. And at one point, I was like, "You got to stop telling me this, man," because like I can see where you're coming from with Argus, and I can't right now, like. Because like I need to see you a very particular way, and if I start to humanize you as a little bit, it's going to inform what I'm doing. But he thought so in depth about like why he was doing what he was doing and the reason he was pushing Charlie in certain ways and stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's like I see where you're coming from, totally. I can't hear it right now because I gotta go. I gotta feel a very specific way about you in these scenes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a follow-up where it's both of the villains in the same room. We can talk about that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Last question for you about Charlie as we wrap up Charlie's world. And for everyone who's listening, we're still in Rough Cuts. We're starting this podcast series to raise awareness about process of all the kind of talented crew and cast brought into this world, as well as eventually want to keep going with like sci-fi and fantasy writers. Like, how do you do this kind of work, right? But for you, Nathan, first, I'm going to give you your flowers, dude. It's been an honor to work with you over the last 3 films. I'm super stoked on your performance on this. I think you went a lot deeper than anything we've done before, and it really shows in this film. And I think audiences are going to be really surprised about it. So I'm proud of the work you did, proud of this film so far, and I'm really excited for people to see it. Last question for you, bud. Now that you've lived with Charlie, do you feel like you fully understand him? And second part of that question is, do you like him?
Great questions. I love Charlie so much. I think I don't know what I can compare it to. It's a weird thing making a character. I've never had a son, and he doesn't feel like a son. It's like a brother that you made or something. I love my brother so entirely. When I think about it, it makes me emotional just thinking about how much I love him. And with a character, I think if you do it right, you need to love them. So like I have such a deep love for him. That sound really narcissistic, but it's not me. You know what I mean? It's colored by me, but one of the things I like to say is I'm the thing the light passes through. I'm not the light. I didn't make him. You made him. And I might have changed the color that he is. It might be purple, and if someone else played him, it would have been orange or something, but that's who he is. I think to that end, it's hard to know if I know him fully, because you could write more story and he could do something that I then have to justify, and that shifts his character. That goes back to the beautiful thing about, and the collaborative thing about filmmaking is you don't own anything entirely. Charlie is the things I've done, the things you've done, the way that the entire camera department shot him, the way that Dean lit him, the sounds that were made around him, the way that Parker does the VFX for him. Charlie is the way that Abigail sees him, the way that Argus sees him. Together we make a full picture, and the same for everyone else, right? Every other character is made by everybody, and so I think I feel a very strong, deep license and love for him, or license to him and love for him. But I think in the same way that, what's beautiful about a long partnership with someone and choosing to spend your life with someone is getting to keep learning them as you guys grow together and see them do things maybe they never thought were possible and become a version of themselves that they're proud of. And I think the same is true with characters. I hope we get to do more. I don't know if we will, and if we don't, I think we did great with this film. But I hope we get to do more, and I hope that I get to know him more deeply. I think I have an idea of where I see him going next, I think based on where this one ends, it excites me to think about furthering the timeline, because I think who he would be after this would be, it's kind of like having a friend that's kind of being like a jerk to everyone, and that they're great, but they're kind of being awful to everyone. And then it's like one day they just decide to be awesome, and you're like, I knew you were the best. I knew you were awesome, and I'm so glad that you let this bad shit go, and now you're you, the best version of you. And I feel like there's the potential for Charlie there going forward, that maybe he could be something better than the things he's done, and that makes me really excited. I think I know him pretty well, but I think probably there's more that I don't know that, you might come up with.
Maybe he runs the bureau one day. We don't know.
That's the darkest timeline. But yeah.
Well, good, man. I'm glad we got to do this. I'm
too.
stoked for people to see this online or podcast or just like the clips we put it up. But thanks for chatting.
Of course. Thanks, man. Thank you for the invite, and I mean, thank you for everything. You said some very nice things about me a couple minutes ago, and I feel eternally grateful that we shout out to Emily, if you know you knew, for putting it together, because that is a crazy happenstance. But I cannot be more grateful for the work that we've done together and the stories we've gotten to tell. And it feels great finding a collaborator that you can keep coming back to and keep working together with. And man, I just can't thank you enough.
Yeah, man. It's natural if our next collaboration is a boxing film. That feels like that's the next thing.
There you go.